penguins have been around for several thousand years. There used to be as many as 27 different species of penguins. Then earlier this century, or the past century, the 20th century, we had 21 species of penguins. Now we're down to 19. So the populations are dwindling due to all different kinds of factors, mostly just encroachment on their nesting sites and stuff by man. So everybody's, trying to take care of their particular animal and so forth, that they're interested in, or the plant that they're interested in, and so forth. And when it comes to trying to save endangered and going extinct species, I did ornaments for kids at my work, and I used to do ornaments for people who had grandkids, kids that were working in the same departments in the same building I was in, and also in neighborhoods where I had that people had grandkids, nieces, nephews, and so forth. So at one time I was turning 72 different ornaments every Christmas, and I'd have to start in July or August to get them all done, depending on how complicated it was. And one year I decided I would try penguins. They had just come out with Marching for Penguins and all that stuff, the movies and everything. But to do a penguin, you can do glue-ups of colored woods, black and white or brown and white or yellow and brown, so that you get the same kind of look. I just decided that what I would do was sort of a folk art looking penguin, in that just about any kind of an upright bird that's black and white, people recognize as a penguin just as a caricature. So that's what I was after. Now, the first ones I did them fairly heavy like this, and I used 1 3/4 inch blanks. So since then, I've gone to a 1 1/2, and I use a 5-inch long blank. And usually the penguins are around 3 inches to 3.5 inches long or tall. And as long as you're using black and white, everybody recognizes them as a penguin. At one time, I was carving. I think you may be able to see if you can go to camera number 2, Jan. See how I've got a little line there, a carved line? And what that is a wing or a flipper. And I used to take the time and carve those on the penguins, but it really didn't make any difference, and it sure didn't bring any more money for them. These things, I usually use them as a gift, but if people want to buy them or order them or so forth, for an adult, I'll charge usually $18 unless they're buying 3 or 4 of them, and then I may go to 15. And the little baby ones, they sell for anywhere from $10 to $15, and you'll always sell more of the babies than you will the big ones or the grown-ups. The reason for that is because kids will come in the store with their moms, and they'll see those things, and the moms will go, ooh, ah, and then the next thing you know, the kids are picking them up. So anyway, you can see the difference in the lines of the faces of the penguin. The one of them has a little cleft in the top, and the other's just rounded over. As long as you're doing black and white, people are going to think of them as a penguin, especially if you put a beak on them and so forth. Okay? So anyway, I started doing these things, and they were always out of some scrap wood. Usually I tried to use something like either poplar or soft maple, because those turn easy and they're not terribly expensive woods, because I'm going to paint them since they're a folk art thing. I don't want to use an expensive wood like holly and ebony and make really expensive penguins that I don't know whether the people are going to play with them, take them outside, put them in the dirt, or whether they're going to keep them. I've got a couple of neighbors who actually have kids that are now in their teens, late teens, and they have 16 different ornaments that I've made for them. So people do collect them, which makes it nice. Anyhow, I teach a class on ornaments at John C. Campbell, and I also do demonstrations all year long through Zoom as well as in person when we can, because of COVID. And in the class at John C. Campbell, it's a 7-day class, and we'll turn for 6.5 of those days, and we'll end up making anywhere from 11 to 17 different ornaments during that time, and all of them will be somewhat different. I have a book that goes along with it. You'll see I sent a handout to Drew so that he could send it to all of you, so you'd have the handout for the penguin and the chick. So you should have those, or have access to a PDF that you can print out if you need to. Or you can just download it and use it whenever you want to, if you decide to make a penguin. Anyway, I'm not trying to make any particular kind of penguin, but I do have a preference for the chicks. And you'll see the little chick I've got on here has kind of a two-face or two-color face and a gray body. And that's not what an emperor, which these are emperor penguins, baby looks like. It's all gray, and I'll show you some of each of those when we go to the gallery at the end. But anyway, we'll show you how to make these real quick and tell you some tips about wood turning, drill bits, all different kinds of things that I've come across as I go along, and try not to bog you down on any particular thing. At the same time, I'd like to give you some, some tips on how to save some money, also how to improve some of your skills. Okay? Are there any questions so far about doing a penguin ornament and why I use just a painted ornament? All righty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a 5-inch blank, this 1.5 inches square, and I've already found the centers. I used a simple center finder like these, and just run it in the corners and make your lines with the pencils. Okay? And you can find your center. Then you use an awl or a punch. Now, there's two things I would say are worth buying at Harbor Freight. Otherwise, I don't think there's many things over there that are worth having, especially not that are electric. But you can buy steel compasses, and you can buy these automatic punches, spring punches. These things will usually run anywhere from $1.99 to $3.99, and the compasses, you can get these things for $5.99 on up to about $19.95 that'll do a 28-inch circle. So these are worth the money, and part of it's because they're not electronic in any way. I use the punch when I'm doing my centers. After I make my X, I just push down on it, and it'll punch a hole in there so that I can stick my blank onto the chuck. Give me number 2, Jan. Camera number 2, please. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the point of the stem center, put it right on the hole I made with the punch, and I'm going to come up with the tailstock. I love these tailstocks, these stainless steel, very, very sharp. They're available through a lot of places now. I found them on Etsy, I found them on eBay, and I found them on Amazon for anywhere from $15.99 up to $24.99. And they're stainless steel. They're very, very sharp. So if you're using them for bowls, make sure you take them out of your tailstock, or you're going to ruin your elbow by poking into them. But for small material, it's great. It's got a really sharp point, so it holds things well. You don't have to really crank down with your tailstock and your center to hold pieces in. I use a stem center up here that mounts into my chuck, and you can get those from Craft Supply, Packard. I think even Woodcraft carries them. They are fairly expensive, but they're a real time saver. And I'll show you why they're a time saver as soon as I finish roughing this out. I'm going to take a tool rest and move it up. And I use a robust tool rest for most of my turnings, unless I'm doing roughing out bowls or something. And the reason is they have this nice steel rod on here. This is M2 steel. So it's the same steel as most of your tools are made of, so it doesn't get nicked or dented. And it gives you a nice smooth surface to roll across. I've used this thing for probably 10 years now, and there's hardly any notches or anything on it. But they're made by Robust Lathe Company, but you don't have to buy a Robust lathe to get the tool rest. They're very good, excellent tool. I'm going to use a rough and gouge on this. It's a spindle, so I'm going to use a rough and gouge to rough it down to a cylinder. And also I'll put a tenon on here so that I can put it in a number 1 jaws, and I'll show you those in a minute. I'm going to put my glasses on because they're safety glasses. I typically will use a shield, but that interferes with the microphone when I'm teaching classes. So I always try to make sure all my wood is sound, that I'm not going to hit anything. I'll roll the piece by hand. Then I'll turn the lathe on and turn the speed up gradual. I like to rough turn around 22 to 2400. And what I'll do is I'll put my tool on tool rest, And I'll go up with the bevel higher than it needs to be. I'll find the bevel. Then I'll raise the rear of the handle to get my cut. Then I'll point the direction I want to cut. I want to get it fairly smooth, but not all the way necessarily, because I don't want to lose any more wood than I have to. That's a pretty good cylinder. Then I'll take a 3/4 or 3/8 inch, beading parting tool, and I'll use that to make my tenon. My tool rest is a little bit high, so I'm going to drop it down. I'll go in straight, tear less fibers.
Nice.
It's not so important when you're making a tenon because you're going to be turning that off, but every time you make a cut, if you make a cut like it's your last, then you're going to learn to be a better turner. My #1 jaws are about, gosh knows, over an inch long. So I'm going to give myself a nice long inch tenon here. I want the wall to be a 90-degree way here so it catches well. I can see looking at my TV or my monitor that I'm a little bigger on this end. All righty. I've got this down to a cylinder now, and I've got a tenon on it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the chuck from the #2 jaws to #1 jaws. Put that piece in, and I'll start my shape. This is why I like to use the step center, is because it fits. The jaws fit in these grooves right here, and they lock tight. And at the same time, I'm ready. If I've got a 2-inch or bigger blank, I've already got a tenon. I just slip it right in there with the step center removed, and I'm ready to turn. I use Talon chucks for most everything. I like the square, straight jaws instead of the angled jaws or the dovetail like you do on Vic Barks and some of the other English and Australian-made chucks. I haven't had any problems with the straight jaws or the tenon being straight as opposed to being at an angle like you'd have to make with a dovetail type jaw. So I'm getting a good grip. I'm pushing my jaws up to the shoulder of the piece, and then I'm getting a nice tight grip on it. Then I'll come back up and I'll take my tailstock, bring it up slow, not quite come in contact, and then wind it up slowly into and see if it goes back into the same center as before. If it did, I should have a fairly well squared up, lined up piece. And it shouldn't take much at all to finish truing it up. Now that I've got it gripped on it in a chuck in between centers with the live center on the other end. So I'm going to smooth this out a little bit. I'll turn my speed up some more. I know it's not going anywhere. Now I'm turning my tool just a little bit at an angle, about a 30-degree, and coming backwards. What I did just then was I made basically a glass surface in that I used my roughing gouge as a negative rate scraper by turning it, riding the bevel, but also turning it at about a 30-degree and then sliding it backwards, not forwards, along the lathe. And it'll make a glass finish just like the skew will. That's not terribly necessary for what I'm doing right now, but like I said, I'm always trying to make my cuts better, and the more I can improve things, the better. So anytime I'm making a cut, I'm trying to improve or try something different. Now I'm going to make this little curve right here first. It's about a half a bead, but it's kind of long. I can do that with the roughing gouge by just turning the roughing gouge over to the side a little bit. And you also notice I'm pulling the handle. I do pull the handle a little bit towards me, towards that curve. All right. Now I know I'm going to put a bead up, a cove up here. So I'll go ahead and give myself some room and also get an idea of where my cove is going to be. That'd be kind of a long penguin, so I'm going to shorten it up a little bit. All right, that's nice and smooth. Now use a 1/2 inch spindle gouge. You can use a 3/8, you can use a 1/4, you can use whatever size you want. I feel comfortable most of the time using a 1/2 inch. I get no vibration that way. And if you also notice, most of my spindle gouges have a 7-inch handle. These were custom made by Doug Thompson lathe tools. And the reason a lot of the turners in our club and a lot of turners that we teach use 7-inch handles is because 7 inches is what you need to offset the torque of any kind of tool that's an inch over the tool rest. After you go an inch off the tool rest, you need more than 7 inches. But if you think about it, especially you pin turners, very rarely do you ever go more than 7 inches off the tool rest. So why have a big long tool handle like this and a long piece of tool sticking out that can vibrate? Plus, this is keeping you from being close to your work. So you really can't see exactly where you're cutting, where with your 7-inch handle, you can almost get right over the top of it and see what's going on. You can see my bevel being rubbed and everything. So I like to use a 7-inch. It doesn't mean I won't use a longer handle. I feel comfortable both ways, but this gives me less room taken up in a toolkit. It gives me all the strength I need or all the balance I need for that 1 inches over the tool rest, having 7 inches of handle. And it also gives me a nice, comfortable handle that won't roll off my lathe because it has flat spots. You can make handles and glue your pieces in there, your tools in there, or you can buy collets like this, and then you can slide your handle in and out just like you can on the Thompson tools. Okay, I'm going to make a cove right here. Then I'm going to shrink this down a little bit right here because this is going to be the head of the penguin. And I'll start shaping that bead. But first, I'll go ahead and do this. I'm just going back and forth, just trying to take it down a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. Blend that cove in. Then I'll go up here and decide where I want to make the head, the top of it, and start making that rounded shape. Got to blend this cove every time I cut back here at the base of the head. It isn't a very sharp tool. So we go to this one. This is 3/8. I'm just trying to round that over, get that blended in. Take those few tool marks out. They have a kind of a high shoulder there. So I'm taking that down. A little bit of sanding will fix that, or I can just go to my roughing gouge. Nobody ever thinks of using rougher gouge for finished cuts. All right. So now I've got my body and my head made. I'm going to give myself a little bit of recess room back here. So when I get to the point where I want to take part of the head off, I've got plenty of room there. And the next thing I need to do is drill the body out. I took a penguin like this, and after it was made, I weighed it, and it ran 8 grams. The ones that I had solid ran 16 grams. So they're actually twice as heavy if you don't hollow it. You don't have to hollow it a lot, I'll show you. A lot of it's going to get done by the Fosner bit or the twist bit you use. All right, this is a 3/8 or a 7/8, I'm sorry, 7/8 inch Fosner bit. And I'm going to go into the bottom. And since I use the awl, can you give me a number 3 camera, Jan? Since I used the awl or the spring punch, I've got a center already there for it. So I put my Fosner bit in a drill chuck. Go up real slow. I don't want to touch it yet because these are always a little bit wobbly. And I want to turn my speed down to about 650 to 725. Then I'm going to drill slowly. I lock my base of my tailstock down. It went right to the center. Fosner bit's a little bit dull. I don't try to go too terribly far without pulling it out. Now, I usually pull it out instead of winding it out. The reasons for that is if you pull it out, it'll come out quickly. And if you wind it out, it's going to be slow. And what you're hearing when you're hearing all that squealing is the heat of the drilling heats up the metal and the wood. So both of them are squealing against each other because they're so tight. Make sure when you're doing this that you don't have your drill chuck hit your tool rest. All right. Now, this is hot as blazes, so don't go sticking your finger on it thinking you're going to see how far you're going in or if it's cleaned out or whatever. I'm going to guess that I've got plenty of depth here and go all the way to the end of this. And I probably still have about that much more room in the head. But this being a demo, I'm not going to go any further than what I've got the drill bit in, the chuck. Take the drill chuck out. And we'll do a real quick hollowing. I'll cut the lathe off, move the tool rest around. And you can hollow with a skew, you can hollow with curved bent tools. You can even just do it with the drill and not even do any hollowing. I usually do hollowing on my ornaments, and I'll go up to as much as a 3-inch globe with a 1/4 inch round skew. And the way it looks is this. Can you go overhead, number 2? This is my 1/4 inch round skew, and you can see it gets used a lot. It's got all kinds of stains and everything else on it, but it's cut at about a 45-degree angle. And then it's got 2 very sharp, almost 15 degrees on each side. And what this actually does, I use the point of it to drive the whole tool into the wood. But what it actually does is it acts like a drill bit with that angle and the 2 shear sides of it. It'll just chew everything up. It won't give out ribbons. It'll just chew everything up to just powder. Anyhow, I'm going to hollow this real quick. And I like to turn on a high speed when I'm hollowing. I go in with the toe and try to follow this outside line.
Can you change the camera?
Yes, like it on number 3. Good, number 3, Jan. There you go. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to try to keep my hands out of the way. I'm coming now and I'm going around this angle right here. I usually anchor right here really tight, but you can't see if I do that. And that's all I do for the hollowing. Next, if you notice, all of these have a plug on the end of them. See if you can see the plug. There you go. You can see where I signed it and everything. I put a few rings on it so you know it's made, and not something a machine is just tucked in there. Okay, so I'm going to need a little shelf for the plug to fit on. So I'm going to take my skew again, and I'm cutting at an angle because the point of the skew is like that. I'm going to need to bring the skew around like this so that my cutting edge is parallel to the tool rest so that I can get a nice flat edge. First thing to do is get a start of it with the point first. I go in about probably 3/16, and then I take the tool and go over to the side to make the cut or the ledge flat. And I'll turn the tool the other way and just get any dirt off of it or shavings off of it, okay? So now I've got a step. I've got my penguin body and my head. I would sand at this point just up to 220 or 240. I'm not going to worry about the inside of it any more than I have, and it's all going to be glued shut so nobody will be able to see up in there. If you want to clean it and sand it, you can. I don't know what the point would be, but some people like to sand a lot, so that would be an ideal time to get the practice of it. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and part this penguin body off. So I want to give myself a little more recess. And I want to come back here with the spindle gouge. Try to follow this skull or head to the penguin. Trying to get that little tool mark out. I learned a long time ago you can either sand the wood away or you can turn it away. Turning's a lot quicker, and sanding takes a lot more time. You can also do a scraper with your skew in that you can turn your tool sideways. Just touch one side, the bottom usually. Turn it at 45 and just slide it around very slightly. You can work it both ways. Be sure you're not putting too much pressure or too little pressure because it can start vibrating and you'll hear it whistle. That works fine. And sandpaper works fine. Just hit it real quick. You're talking about sandpaper. I usually get bulk sandpaper from Clean Sport. And you can buy it at their symposiums they're at or whatever, and they sell it by the pound, and it's really cheap, especially the last day they're at symposium. It's like $2.25 or something a pound, and you can go off with a huge bag of sandpaper. But I go in, I cut it in pieces about 4x4 and write what grit it is. But 220 is plenty on this because I'm going to paint a gesso on there. So I won't really be looking at the actual surface of the wood. I just want it to be smooth so that when I paint it, I can get through there and it look decent. Okay. I want to go ahead and finish turning the head off of this booger. So I've got a little smaller. I've got a 3/8 inch spindle gouge here. Give myself a little more room. Raise my tool rest up a little bit. I like to part off with a skew because it gives me an opportunity of really screwing up my piece if I mess up. Or it makes a nice clean finish cut. Now keep in mind, I would typically sand this to 220. Typically sand it to 220 so that I don't have to do much of anything else with it. I do have the top of it. It would need a little sanding. I'm going to tap this now. If you'll give me a number 2. Or you got number 2. Let me see which one of these is going to show the most. There you go. This is all the sawdust that came out of there. And it made it half as heavy. All right. I've got the penguin done. I've got a step. I need to make a little plug. I've got some wood right here to do it with. So I'll start right here and make a plug. You can use a parting tool for that. I need a plug about that big. All righty. So I've got the size of my plug. I want to go ahead and turn it off, but I want to have a little bit of a step back here. And I want people to know this is handmade. So turn my tool rest around. Come up a little closer. Make some circles. And I'll come back and part the rest of the plug off. Okay. Here's my plug. Now this hasn't been sanded or anything. And I'll just set it down to the bottom. And I'll use some thick CA glue to fill in around there. And that's finished as far as the body and the head of the penguin's concerned. From that point, I'll coat the whole thing, put it on number 2. Yep. Let's see. I'll put it over here. I use, okay, that works. I use gesso, which is a prep, surface prep for paint. And you can use it on almost anything. It'll stick to metal, wood, plastic, paper, whatever. It's used by it was used by artists for oil and acrylic paints more than anything else to give you a nice solid white surface and a fairly smooth surface on canvas so that you can put your paints on and you're not having it absorb into the canvas as much because this locks off the surface like a sealer would. Anyhow, this will give me a nice solid white surface all over. I'll paint the bottom with the plug and everything. And sometimes I'll use 2 coats of it. If it gets a little bit thick and makes some paintbrush lines, if it makes a lot of them, I may sand it just a little bit with some 400 grit. But you're going to have this kind of white from the gesso. So after I've painted it white all over, and I may have sanded or I may not, depends on how smooth it is, I take a pencil and I draw my little outline of where the black's going to be. And I paint that with a acrylic. And you can use lots of them. There's Createx, which is used in airbrushes. There's Liquitex. There's all kinds of acrylic paints. I found this. It's Americana. That's the brand of it. And it's an acrylic paint, so it washes up with soap and water. And that bottle of it I've had probably for 10 years now. We use it in the classes at John C. Campbell and when we're doing demos and stuff on site at other wood turning clubs. And I use that for the black, and it usually takes one coat of it. You can put two if you want, but one coat usually does the job.
Do you have a template that you use when you paint to separate the white from the black? Where you draw that out? How do you get that so perfectly aligned?
I'll go in and I'll paint it all white, and then I'll come in with a pencil. But each one of these things may be a little bit different size, so a template may or may not work. And I've been kind of lazy about it and just freehand them and do them. I don't really use the template. If you did, it would probably look a lot neater and smoother than what I've got. I feel like that if I'm going to really make a really perfect ornament, it ought to be selling for somewhere around $30 to $50, not 18 or 20 or so. So I'm not terribly worried about these being absolutely perfect as far as the lines go and so forth. I want it to look like a penguin. I want it to smell like a penguin and walk like a penguin. That's it.
I got a question for you too, Bob.
Yes.
I didn't hear it earlier. What's the point of hollowing it out? Are you just trying to make it lighter? Is it?
I'm trying. The question is, why do I hollow it out? It's just so daggone heavy when you put a piece of wood on a tree that hadn't been hollowed out. Even if all you do is drill it, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache because you're going to have a limb that's just sagging the whole time it's on there. Now, if you're using it for a decoration or using an ornament hanger, doesn't really matter. And honestly, customers aren't going to know it unless they put it on their tree and then they see the limbs starting to hang down and so forth, because wood weighs a lot. It weighs a whole lot more than, say, the glass and some of the plastic ornaments that are available today. But I just did it to lighten up the ornament. Now, you don't have to use these things as ornaments. You can always use them as decorations just sitting on a table or whatever. Kids love these things. You can put these things on a birthday decoration or something, and they're going to just go nuts over them. They love all kinds of little animals and things. So when you put the babies out, have twice as many babies as you do adults, because you're going to sell the heck out of them. I'll guarantee you'll be saying, man, I wish I'd have made a lot more babies than I did adults. Even though you sell the adults for a little bit more money, it takes just as much time. Any other question at this point?
Do you do the painting with the brush?
Yeah, I just use an inexpensive acrylic brush. I usually go to Michael's or someplace like that, and I've ordered online too. I've ordered from Amazon. I'd be lazy and I say, well, they got a pack of 20 brushes for $5 or something and $2 shipping. I'll get that. So if it's a decent brush, I'll keep using it. If it's not, I just throw them away. But you'll get some really good brushes. You'll get some not so great brushes. I started using really expensive ones when I first started out, but then when I take them to classes, they don't always come back the same way as they left. So I use inexpensive ones. One thing I'll say about drill bits, and I'll talk to you about that in just a second, but I use the Fosner bit for doing the hole on the inside to hollow it. You don't have to use a Fosner bit. You can use, a big brad bit, or you can even use jobber bits. And I like these, especially in a classroom setting where I have a lot of people need to use the drill real fast. They can take this as some Morse tape or two, stick it right in their tailstock, and they're ready to go. And when you're doing the bottom of the ornament, it's not going to matter if it has a little bit of a tear out around that hole, because you're going to clean it up some anyway. But I use these quite a bit on some of the bigger ornaments. And I know I'm going to be doing a lot more hollowing. If you're doing precision holes, and that would be like where you're drilling a small hole for the beak to go into, you don't want to do all this painting and turning and everything and then do that last hole and it be a jobber bit and it grab the side of the wood and tear a bunch of the fiber out and mess up your paint job. So I use the brad points. And any of it that have been using brad points, you can see they've got three edges that cut. The lead edge is going to follow whatever straight line it started with, and then the two outer edges are going to cut the hole clean on the outside. So you don't have all that really rough edges and a bunch of tear out splinters on your holes. So get some brad bits. You could buy, I think they come in a pack of 8 or something like that for $7.95 off at Amazon. I believe they're Irwin, and if not, they're Stanley or something like that, Black & Decker. And those are good. Those are actually a wood bit, so are Fosner bits. These are most of these are ground to a metal type bit. They're not really for wood, but they work because wood's softer than metal. All right, I'm going to go to the beak on the big penguin. And for that, I'm going to use a piece of yellow heart. And this will get yellower as it gets finish on it. But I'm not going to worry about whether it's got a tenon on it. I'm just going to chuck it up straight into the jaws. And I know it's fairly square, so it's going to be grabbed by every one of the jaws going around. And all I need is a little bit here at the end, about an inch of it to work with. So I've got that in, and I'm going to rough this out. And to do that, I'm going to use a 1/2 inch spindle gouge instead of a roughing gouge. First of all, let's make sure everything's going to turn okay. Let's just get the corners off here. Now there are smaller roughing gouges that you can buy, but I'll usually use a spindle gouge or a bowl gouge for something small. I want to get this sound. For this size penguin, I'm going to leave it at about 3/8 of an inch. And what I'll do is I'll use the skew again. If I go in straight, you see how this point is off in the angle towards the head of the lathe. Oops. Well, you're going to see me knock a piece out of here. Then yeah, if I hold it like that, I'm automatically going to make an undercut. I'm going to cut a tenon first. Try to make it about 1/8 of an inch. And I've got an undercut. And now I've got to clean up that little spot where I tore out, not paying attention. Raise my tool rest up a little bit. I am using a skew, and that typically needs to be at a different angle from a spindle gouge. I want to make a cone. Can you see what I'm doing? Yeah, okay. I give myself some working space, but a penguin beak isn't really just a straight cone. It comes over a little bit. So I want my beak to come over. I'll turn my skew over so I can work with the toe and get in close. Go ahead and part my beak off. Okay. Now, if I've got a brad point, I can go in and drill. And what I'll generally do is, you can see the rings here. Can you see the rings, the growth rings on that?
Yep.
I'll try to use those as a marker and use that as my front of my face, even though it'll be painted over. I'll get an idea where I'm going to put that. And sometimes I'll mark it ahead of time. You can take the punch and just make a small mark, or you can take a compass, anything, and make a small mark. And when you paint your gesso, you'll probably be able to still see that, unless you put 2 or 3 coats on. But this is the penguin. It's got the plug, the body, the head, and now it's got the beak. I'm horrible about thinking it's closer to me than it is. So I just glue all this with thick CA glue. And since I mentioned CA glue, I will tell you, I like this brand. It's called Mercury. And I also like rabidmodels.com. And I also like Hurricane adhesives. The Hurricane tools are not that particularly good, but their adhesive is. And the reason I like that is because these caps come up in steps, but up in the top of it, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but you can see a little shiny spike down there. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little pin in there that goes down to the top of the glue spout and keeps it from clogging up. And I've been using one of those that there's, like I said, there's more than one company. Here's another company that has them. This is Rabid Models. And it's the same type of bottle. So I know it's not something rare. And I'll use thick CA glue for most of the stuff that I do on the penguins because I need it to get a full grip around. The reason I undercut is undercut the beak is if you notice this beak fits pretty flush. There's a little bit of a gap right here, but not much all the way around. And that's because you've got a odd surface. It's not a smooth surface, it's a rounded surface. This one, on the other hand, I didn't undercut, and you can see light all the way around it. You see that?
Yep.
See that little edge all the way around? That's because I didn't undercut underneath the beak. Any questions on the adult penguin?
You drilled after you painted it. Is that not?
Yes, I drill it after I finish painting everything. The only thing I haven't painted on there yet are the eyes. And that's because it's important to know where the beak is to space the eyes out right. And I usually do a soft pencil and make 2 little dots just to see if I like where they are. If they're not, then I'll try to erase them. If they don't erase it, I can take just a little bit of gesso and paint right over the top of them. You'll never see where they were. But I'll practice to see where the eyes are going to go. And then I use what's called a fabric paint. And this stuff, I'm going to hold it close to the camera up here. Oops. Number 1, please, sir. This is by a company called Scribbles. And this is 3D fabric paint. It doesn't have to be 3D. I use the 3D because I use it on my snowman. It looks like coal because it'll rise up. With the eyes on the penguin, all I'm trying to do is get a couple of black dots. And this thing has a very, very fine point on it. They actually use it to scribe and scribble things on T-shirts and stuff. So what I do is I squeeze up a little dot of it. I'll get it over here on the side. Squeeze up a little dot of it, and you can see it. And then I'll touch it down on the wood to make my eyes. This bottle's 6 or 7 years old too. And I've made at least, gosh knows, probably 200 snowmen and I guess 125 or so adult penguins. I don't know how many babies I've made. I'll do the babies just anytime. I know they're going to sell. So if I'm just sitting around doing nothing and don't have anything going on, I'll just pop out a baby penguin. Baby penguin is very similar. Why wouldn't it be? It's just a smaller penguin, right? So I use an inch size piece for that. It's still soft maple. You can use poplar or whatever. I'm not doing the centers between centers on this because I'm going to end up, no matter what, pretty close to 1 inch in diameter when I get through turning this true. Check, see if everything's okay. Turn my lathe on, let it come up to speed. Here again, I'll find my bevel, raise the handle until I make my cut, and slide across. I use my body, even when I'm doing pins and ornaments, I use my body, and that way I get a smoother cut, because I can always slow down or I can go fast. But if you're using your arms, you're going to be jerking like that, especially the tireder you are in the day. So I want to get this round. I'm going to do the same exact thing I did. I'm going to make a little half coat or half bead. These boogers have a kind of a rounded belly to them, more so than the adults. So I'm turning my cove here, right where the neck is. Try to round this bead over a little more. Got a little flat spot right here. A little bit of a rise right here. The sand knows you won't even notice it. All right, now I've got a smaller size bit to go here. Now, since I didn't pull up my my tailstock and go with the center, I need to find the center. So I'm taking my skew, I'm taking the toe of it, the toe of my skew, and I'm going right to the center of the bottom of the penguin. It'll make a perfect cone if it's in the center, the dead center. If it makes a cone with a point in the middle, then you're not quite in the center. This will give me an ideal spot for my drill bit to start and keep right on going. Now, what I want to do here, because I don't have a lot of wood, is I want to make sure my drill bit is going to clear through here. It's going to be really tight. And we'll see how it does. I'm going to mark it. Mark my drill bit. Pull my stock out of the way. Turn the lathe back down very slow. I got a lot of tool marks on here, but I'm glad you're coming from angle 3 because you can't see them. Now go straight in. And hopefully I won't see metal. That's going about 3/4 of the way through the little penguin. And we'll come around to the end. I'm not going to hollow. I'm just going to do the drilling on this. I don't usually hollow them because they're so small. So what I need now is turn the lathe speed up. I need to make a little step here for a plug. Okay. Come over sideways to square it up. I'll even come in back this way and cut a little bit of the fuzz off on the inside. And what I would do is sand this. Something else I can tell you about sandpaper. 2 of my favorite sandpapers now are ProNet by Ken Rizzo's company, Woodturner's Wonders. They have up to 3,000 grit. This is 3,000. This is 3,000 grit, and each grit is a different color. Then there's what's called Abranet, and it's made by a company called Mirka, M-I-R-K-A. I think it's a German company. And both of these you can see through. They're a mesh. So when you're sanding, the sawdust is not building up. It's actually going through the mesh and falling down. So you don't end up with quite as much dust in the air, which I like to call man glitter, because there's no other thing you can do with it. So I use those almost all the time, especially when I'm doing classes, because it creates less dust with the class. This can be bought, the Abernet can be bought from auto supply places where they do body work. It's used a lot for that, and also off of Amazon and eBay and lots of sites like that. Woodturner's Wonder is going to be on woodturnerswonders.com, and you can email or you can talk to Ken Rizzo all the time. He's good about responding to things either by email or calling you up and talking to you. I like Ken a lot. He's a good person to know. But these are excellent, especially if you're doing traveling and you don't need a lot of sandpaper. You can just grab the colors you want, and the grits you need, and you got them. They're easy to keep in order because you got the colors in mind plus the numbers on the back. All right, so any questions about the baby penguin before I part it off? Okay. I'm going to go to an 1/8 inch parting tool. Can you give me number 2? I'm going to go to an 1/8 inch parting tool. Give myself some room back here. Then I'm going to take a skew. And this is where I get to really make a nice spiral. Try to find that line all the way around. Now, at this point, what I'd want to do is to come in here and sand that flat spot. See if I can fix it somewhat by just using the spindle gouge. Should be able to. Getting some vibration there, and that's actually the wood vibrating and nothing else. Come over and take it off. There's a little baby penguin.
Nice.
Except for the plug. I'll cut a little plug. Yep. Throwing my penguin up in the air.
Penguin.
There we go. Now I'll come up behind it. I felt a piece break off. Yeah. Anyway, plug. Let me do another one. Sorry about that. Drop my tool rest down some. There we go. That's a better one. The other one had some chips on it, so they were knocked out. So I got a plug in there. Not a great one, but it's a plug. So the next thing is turning the beak for the baby penguin. This is a 1/4 by 1/4 piece of blackwood. And what I did is I just got some old pin blanks and cut them to 1/4 by 1/4. And I'll cut them in pieces about 2 inches long for each one of the students. All right, because this is so small and you really can't tell by the grain of this whether you've got good straight grain or not. And I had a frustrating time one time with an individual who had cut their wood instead of lengthwise with the fiber. They had cut it across so that the grain of the wood was going like this. And when they tried to cut the beak, it kept breaking off because there was no integrity to the fiber of the wood. It was all going in the wrong direction. So the first thing I need to do is round this up. Believe it or not, all this stuff depends on cuteness on this particular one. So you got to have a cuteness factor. I want to make my little tenon so I can glue it in. Feels like I got a chip out. Let's see if I did, or if I can correct it. Yeah, I got a bad chip out. Let me start them over here. I don't need a long tenon on here, so I'm going to cut this extra off. Still a little bit long. You notice I'm cutting under here, giving it a little undercut. Here again, by using the toe of the skew. I'm going to raise this up a bit. Make my taper. Remember, you don't want this beak to be straight. You want it to have a little rounded or curve to it. So I'm going underneath. All right. Here's my little beak for the baby. It'll be a little bitty. We're going to step over to Kimber number 4 real quick and look at a gallery. These are a bunch of finished penguins at different stages. You can see this particular one was one that I had carved. Is that focused? All right. Where you can see I carved the flippers, but I quit doing that because they wouldn't get you any more money, and they just took longer. So you can see I don't have a template. I just make the lines whatever way I can to make them uniform. Okay. And I am the luckiest man in the world. I have a wife who loves to paint things for me. She's tried some different textures for the penguins. You can see it looks like it has some fluff or something. There's another one with some different texture to it. And then this is a typical one. I paint it. I just give it the paint. And you can see the baby is very similar to the one on the shirt. But this is truly not an emperor penguin baby. It's just a made up thing. The emperor penguin babies actually look more like this. And they're just very simple. But I didn't think that really gave you very much. I think that might pass for a owl baby or something, but it won't make it for a penguin. Anyway, I do lots of things in my wood turning class, and we've done hot air balloons. You turn the balloon, you paint it, you do the basket, you texture the basket, glue the strings on and so forth. And we also do some with laminated woods so that you end up with some colors and you end up with a little bit of exotic wood. I did snowman heads one year with different hats, and I've done 74 different hats so far. This was one of my favorites. Carolina ball players or fans love these with the beer cans on them. And I'll do it in any kind of mascot or any kind of team colors you want. Last year I gave out bird feeders, and they have 3 birds on them and then some bird feed in there. First thing I have my students make is a Christmas tree, because then I can see if they can use a parting tool and a roughing gouge and a spindle gouge. That'll tell me in about 20 minutes where they're at. One of my favorite ornaments is the lantern ornaments, especially the ones laminated, where I've drilled different colors of wood together and so forth. And I came up with a 4-part angel. This is red heart, yellow heart, maple, and then chalk de Vega in the back. And you texture the wings some. Everybody loves acorns. I saw a really cool looking acorn when I was up in Ohio, a big burr acorn, so I modeled one after that. And we've done toy soldiers and lighthouses. That's some other folk art stuff. And these are fun, and they don't take much time, and students really enjoy being able to turn something and make an ornament. My favorite of all of them is the beanie with the propeller.
My question was, do you put the little eye screw in at the end?
The eye screws, yes, I do that in the end. Yes, put them in the end. Yeah, putting the eye screws in, and I put the eye screws in at the very end. Is that what you asked?
Yes. Do you drill first? How do you hold them?
Yeah, actually, if you use a skew to part off, you'll end up with a little dimple almost every time, and it's perfect for starting with a Dremel. So I'll drill with like a 2mm Dremel drill bit and drill a hole there and put the screw eyes in. I get my screw eyes from Etsy. They'll usually be a Chinese company, but there's some of them on there that have like 1,000 screw eyes for $8 or something, you know. You just got to be careful because most of them are in metric, so you need to check and make sure it's one the size you can use. Somebody else had a question that right after Deb was talking. Who was that?
That was me. I have a question on the snowman heads. Are they drilled out too?
Yes, sir. They're hollowed. They weigh about 4 grams. They're just about a sphere that's hollowed to a 1/16 of an inch thick, and then I put the hats on, and they sit over the top of the hollowed hole.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Well, guys, you've been just great. I'm glad we got everything straightened out sound-wise. I had a good time. I hope you did, and I hope you learned some things. If you have any questions, I've got my website is bobbaucomwoodturner.com. It's all one word. And also you can email me. The email address is on my website, as well as it's up at the top of the PDF that Drew has sent out to everybody. It's bobac81695@AOL.com, but it's on the header of that. So you'll be able to find the website as well as the email address. And I answer questions all the time. I do have an ornaments class, like I said, coming up in December. It's the last week that John C. Campbell teaches in the year, and we'll be doing Christmas things that week. So I'll be doing ornaments. It's a lot of fun. Come on up if you haven't ever taken a class there. It's a fun place to be for a whole week.